here's the thing about trauma. Let me tell you this. When you go through so much and people are not listening, it's hard to believe when there is someone who comes along and has your best interest at heart, because all of the other people have betrayed you and other people have, dismissed you and done it. It's hard. Trust is broken. And it's not just broken with those people, but you start to mistrust or distrust people that actually have your best interest at heart. And so I couldn't differentiate. I was always in fight mode, even towards the people who were trying to help me. And so it took some hard falls and some maturing to realize everybody is not trying to hurt me. That there are some good people out there that want to see the best in me, that want to see me win. Because I had so many people who were trying to tear me down, sabotage my career, hurt me physically, and all these different things, that anybody who tried to come in, I had these walls up. You can't heal what you hide. Well, my name is Kamille Thomas, and I am a single mother of 2 beautiful daughters. I'm from the USA. I live in Georgia, but originally from California. And I'm a 25-year Air Force veteran. Spent 25 years in the U.S. Air Force, and I was an aircraft mechanic. And, with all that being said, right now I'm a writer, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a writer, copywriter, and I love what I do. So there's a whole lot in between, but we'll talk about that soon. I believe everyone has a story to tell. And I love stories, personal stories. It's a way to connect with people. It's a way to tell people that, you're not alone in your struggle. And sometimes your voice gives a voice to other people. It gives them the courage to speak up about what they've gone through. And again, it's healing. I've had a lot of defining moments in my life. But really, I think more so the end of my life that really has defined. I just said I spent 25 years in the Air Force. I had a lot of challenges. I'll say a lot of challenges, but I'm here. Early in my life, I suffered abuse. I suffered physical abuse, sexual abuse. I was kidnapped at one point. My mom and I didn't have a great relationship growing up, but she's one of my biggest supporters today. And also, I've been able to share my story. I'm a master resilience trainer. And so all of those experiences that I've had have allowed me to connect with people and to give them some hope, show them different ways to cope with things, to handle them, to grow through adversity. And so at this point in my life, I know that everything that I went through was for a reason. And it's for this reason and where I'm at now, that I'm able to talk about it, from a place of healing. Where it's not as traumatic anymore, even though I've gone through counseling as a child. I've been through counseling my whole career. But from all the things that I've learned, it's allowed me to speak from a place of healing and let other people know that you're not alone. And it doesn't always stay the way that it is, that you can overcome. You can do what you want to do and get better on the other side. So. Well, I kind of had I call it a riches to rags story. And what I mean by that is my father was Air Force. And so I was actually born in Okinawa, Japan. And myself and 2 other sisters, one who's not living anymore. And when I was about 4 years old, my parents moved. They got stationed in California. Now, my mom's a native Californian. My dad's from Philadelphia, but he got stationed at March Air Force Base in California. And so I remember living there, and life was great. I love my dad. And so my father retired shortly after. My mother moved to California, and of course, as a child, you never know why. But she moved to San Diego, and my father and my older sister stayed. She took me and my younger sister. And we moved in with my grandparents, my grandmother specifically, and my mom's brothers and sisters. And eventually my father came, he retired and came down. And so I had a big family unit, where we all lived in one house and for a short while. And my father started working for a national steel company. Again, we had a great life. My parents bought this big 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, and it was more than enough room for all of us. My father would take us to Magic Mountain, Disneyland, all the big amusement parks, Knott's Berry Farm on the weekends while my mom stayed home, and she cooked and cleaned the house from top to bottom. And I thought everybody was happy. And all was well until it wasn't. And one day, my parents just out of nowhere, well, for us, it was out of nowhere, but they brought us in the living room, and I'll never forget, and sat us down, and all 5 kids, and said, we've decided to get a divorce. I was 9 years old. My older sister was 12, and the youngest boy was 18 months. I remember my sister having a really bad reaction, and I kind of was like, why? What happened? You know, in my mind, life was good, right? And so very quickly, we ended up moving to a very small 3-bedroom apartment. And when I say very small, we went from this big house to like 900 square feet, maybe less. And we all had to fit in this house. And so after time, you know, it was a struggle between my parents. My mother started dating again. And at first, this guy, Mr. Ted is his name, was very nice. You know, he was this big guy. He had a lot of things going for him, and I really liked him. But very soon after, alcohol does a crazy thing, right? You can only be who you are for so long before you really become who you are. And he turned out to be very violent, very abusive, physically, emotionally, verbally. We had several fights. I remember one time I was 11 years old, and we had moved to another apartment, and my mom was at work. This is how I came to know that I'm a fighter, aside from just, you know, growing up in a rough area. But he was trying to abuse my siblings and I. And I couldn't stand, I wasn't the oldest, but I was the biggest. And so I made all of my siblings go into the room and lock themselves in the room. Because he came home yelling, fighting, swinging, hitting everything. And so it was the first time that I actually fought back. And called my mom. I was able to lock myself, you know, in a room, called my mom. And the response was, what did you guys do to him to make him upset? And so very quickly we learned that we didn't get the support that we needed from my mom. It was always our fault. He would come in drunk. We would see him laying literally in the middle of the highway, passed out drunk on the ground, have to call the police, have them come pick him up. He would come home fighting us again, have to call the police. They would take him to jail, and he would come right back home. And this went on for years. And then when I was 16, my sister, she had had a baby by then. She was 19. And one day it was her and I on the couch. She came home drunk, and he came home pushing my sister. She had her 6-month-old baby in her arms. And couldn't stand it anymore. Couldn't stand it. And so, again, I told her, you go, you know, take the baby and go. And I hit him to distract him from her because he would just berate her. He went chasing me around the house, you know, and we're just fighting. And he's a very big guy. And he hit me in my chin, and it split my chin open. And I felt a sting, you know, the sting. And I was like, what happened? I knew he hit me, but I didn't realize I was cut till I looked down and there was blood all over my shirt. So I'm climbing and jumping over couches, and I run out of the house, run down the stairs up the other side to a friend of mine. It was my boyfriend at the time, his house. Same apartment, same road, different sides. And his uncle opened the door and said, what just happened? You know? And so I explained to him what happened. I said, I'm not going home. My mom was out of town. And so he said, well, if he comes over here, you know, you don't have to go back there. But then my sisters and brothers were there too. So he talked to him, Dave was his name, and convinced Dave to make me go back home. So I called my mom, tried to explain, and she didn't believe me. So when she got home from her business trip and saw my chin, she said, well, how did that happen? But over the years, I had been conditioned that no matter what I said, it wasn't going to be the truth. So I said, well, I ran into a cabinet. She was like, is that what really happened? I was like, well, actually, we were outside playing and somebody hit me with a baseball bat. And I say all that for a reason, and I'll bring you to that. And so we left it that way. And me and my mother had a very, very tough upbringing. We didn't see eye to eye a lot. She did the best that she could with what she had. Sometimes I say well, she could have done better. But now as an adult, being a mom, going through traumatic events, I can understand, if you understand what I mean. And so, long story short, we got into an argument over chicken. She would go on these health binges, and she told me to bake the chicken, don't fry it. And I was like, I'm frying chicken. But I was very rebellious because I was angry. And so she said, don't you fry my chicken, bake my chicken. So I fried the chicken anyway. So 3 days later, she put me out, and I went from California. She shipped me to Georgia with my grandmother, where I was in the summer of my senior year. And so I had one more year to go to school. I had done all of my schooling in California, and senior year here I was forced to go to Georgia. So I took a Greyhound bus, which is a public bus, and for 3 days, my sister, myself, and my 6-month-old niece, we went across the country from coast to coast, and I found myself in a little town called Rome, Georgia, in the northwest corner of Georgia, where I had to go to school. But coming from California is very different. So culturally, it's very different. And I quickly found that I didn't fit in. So they said I was too white for the black folks and too black for the white folks. I dressed like a white girl. I talked like a white girl. I had an attitude like a white girl, but I was black. So I didn't quite fit in with anyone. And so there was one particular girl who really didn't like me. And so she would pick on me through school, you know. It got to the point that right after prom, we got into a fight. And I got suspended from school for a couple of weeks, couldn't make up any finals. And so I found my grade point average, you know, in school, went all the way from a 3.8 to a 1.6. And so I graduated by the skin of my teeth and couldn't go to college. Found myself in a place where my grade point average wasn't good enough to go to the college and universities that I wanted to. And so I had to make a decision, and that was to go to the military. And so they said, you can get out of school for 3 hours if you want to take this test. So I went to the cafeteria, took a test for 3 hours, and scored high enough to go into any branch I wanted to go to. And I chose the Air Force for a couple of reasons. One was that my dad was prior Air Force, and I didn't want to go Army. The Army recruiter, he wasn't very nice, and the Marine recruiter was a bully, so they were out. I grew up in California, where Navy, that's all I grew up around, and I didn't want any parts of it. My dad built those ships, and I was like, nope, not going to be out to sea for 6 months on this ship. So I chose the Air Force, and before my 18th birthday, I went to MEPS, which is our military processing center. And I found unexpectedly that I had a kidney condition. So while I was there, we were actually processing, about to leave, and a nurse pulled me out of the line and said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. She said, no, you're not. And I was like, yes, ma'am, I am. She was like, no, you're not. And she said, I need for you to come to the office. So I went to the nurse's station, and almost immediately I had this weird pain. And they had to rush me back home, an hour and 15 minutes away, and I was hospitalized for a week and had some kidney issues that I didn't know I had. So I was disqualified from military service. And they told me with my condition I was not going to be able to enlist again. And so, find another job. And I was really, really, really persistent. And to the point where I was really nagging, is there a waiver? Can you guys do anything? So I'm begging my recruiter. And after about 5 months, a lot of waivers, I would not take no for an answer. Finally, someone said yes. And so he said, how soon can you leave? I told him, first thing smoking, So January 10th, I was on a plane going to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, for Air Force basic training. And our flight got jacked up, missed the first flight, so we ended up getting there 3 or 4 in the morning. And of course, you're met with people in your face, you're disoriented and all this kind of stuff. And all I could do was laugh. So they called me Smiley, which got me in a lot of trouble. But the thing about it was, no matter how much they laughed at me, people didn't understand. They said, oh, I'm going to slap that Kool-Aid grin off of your face. But what they didn't understand was that I had a mother named Jackie Dozier, who, and she allows me to tell this story, but she was so much worse than they could ever be. And so to me, it was a joke. I'm like, I grew up with this. Who's scared? You'll get over yourself. But Anyway, so my mother was very against me going in the Air Force, and she wouldn't sign my papers because I was underage. She said it was no place for a woman, that women weren't treated well in the armed services, and she would not sign for me to go. And so my father, who was in California, and my mom and dad were both there, my father called my grandmother. They talked, and both of them signed my papers because my grandmother had legal custody of me at the time. And so they said, let her make her own decisions. If she wants to go, let her go. Like, what else is she going to do? So they signed my papers to allow me to go against my mother's wish. But now she says it's the best thing that they could have done because she placed limitations on me that I didn't place for myself. And so she showed up at my graduation, and I had graduated at the top of my class, but I got into some trouble. So I couldn't be publicly awarded. But my TI talked to my mother and told her what happened, and so my mom was very proud. So I went off to what we call technical school in Memphis, Tennessee, and graduated at the top of my class, highest GPA. However, I got into some trouble, and I could not receive my award. But they did publicly acknowledge that I was at the top of the class. And so she was there for my graduation. And my first duty station was Louisiana. It was Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana, home of the B-52 aircraft, the bomber, which is my baby, my first love in aircraft. But shortly after there, I found myself pregnant a month after I got to my first base. And I was 18 years old and just, getting away from home. And it was very crazy because the section I was in, we had kind of bad leadership. So when I was 5 months pregnant, I was assaulted by my supervisor, touched in very inappropriate ways. And he did the same to a lot of women. And I went and was told that they would handle it. A few months later, after I had my daughter and everything, an investigation came out, and I was asked to testify. But at the same time, I was also threatened that if I said something, that they would end my career. And so I refused to testify. However, there were enough witnesses and other people that had been affected that they forced him to retire. And that was the end of his career. I don't know if I should say this, but it's called the Good Old Boys Club, right? So there's a group of people in any organization that they stick very close together, and they cover each other's backs and things like that. And that was kind of what it was. So there was another couple of supervisors in my section. There were some that were advocating for me. One of them told me, he was like, if you don't tell, I'm gonna tell everything. And that's the one I had initially reported to. Then there were some other ones that now were my supervisors that told me if I told, then they would ruin my career. And so I was stuck kind of in between this, do I ruin my career? Because at this point I had my daughter. Or do I tell? And it caused a lot of issues with not just myself long term, but some of the other girls that were affected. Some of them have gone through a lot since that, because it wasn't just that, it was a lot of other things that he did that not even worth talking about, but anyway, I had my daughter. I made the choice, thought she was going to be Down syndrome, so they only gave me about 2 weeks to make a decision whether I was going to keep her or abort her. And her father's mother said, you're not going to be able to care for a special needs child. Like, why would you want a child like that? So I said, I'm going to keep my child. And that was with the full understanding that she could be special needs. And he disappeared. And 2 weeks after I would have had to make that decision, I found out that my daughter was 100% okay. Had I gone through that procedure, there was nothing wrong with her. So I'm grateful to this day for my daughter and for giving me the strength to just say, no matter what you give me, well, what I'm blessed with, you've equipped me to take care of her. So, so that was a big deal in my family. And then I still turned around and married her father because I felt like it was the right thing to do. Even though he literally ran away, I didn't see him for months. I moved off base into my own apartment when I was about 7 months pregnant, and he showed up with all his stuff, and that's how we moved in together. And so, yeah, we eventually married to do the right thing. But I still knew it was the wrong thing. You know, you look at it, you want your kids to have a 2-parent home, which was something I didn't have, you know, for a short period of my life. And I wanted her to have better. I didn't want her to go through the things that I went through. And so I made the decision to marry him. And it was terrible. It was terrible. So it didn't last long. He went to Korea, which, you know, that was his duty station, and they left me home. I was still active duty with my daughter, and it just went south. So eventually we divorced. So I was raising this daughter by myself. And in the time that we were apart, you know, I met someone else, got divorced, and got remarried very young. So first marriage was at 19, second marriage was at 24. And I didn't have any children with him, but I moved to Guam, so a little U.S. island out in the middle of nowhere. And so I moved there, which had always been a dream of mine. I always wanted to go there, and circumstances allowed that to happen. But it wasn't without cost. And the way that I did it wasn't without cost. Married this man, got over there, and realized he had a whole nother life. He was supposed to marry someone else. She sent me all her stuff, so I had to go through that, the embarrassment of being there in front of all these people who didn't even know I existed, expected him to be with someone else. So this is kind of where, you know, I went through another abusive period. He was cheating. He put me out on the side of the road in the rain. So I vowed never to have to depend on him again. I went and bought my own car. I said, you can't drive my car. Right about our anniversary, he steals my car, takes it, and I find some things that don't belong to me in my car. And so I confront him about it. And he goes out one day, he comes back, and we get into an argument. And when I wake up, and I say that for a reason, we were at the front door. My last recollection, when I woke up, I was in the back of the house on the floor with my daughter standing over me yelling. And she says, "Mommy, you shouldn't have said anything, and then this wouldn't happen." It's like, what? So I realized that I had been abused. He hit me, I blacked out. And so I called the police. When the police came, they arrested me. They put handcuffs on me. And I couldn't understand why. I was like, "Why are you arresting me?" Like, you know, and they were like, "Well, look at his face." Well, I don't know, maybe in the struggle, I had grabbed his face, you know, so there were some scars on his face. And all of a sudden I felt a burning, that same kind of burning sensation I felt on my chin, I felt on my body. And so all I could say was, look at my back. So the police officer, I had on a night thing, and he pulled it down. He took the cuffs off immediately, cuffed my ex-husband, and took him away. And so we had a no contact order. So within 18 months of getting married, I was divorced the second time. So very embarrassing. I was in the military still, and it created a lot of hardship for me, you know, but all I could do was keep going. My mom would say, "Kamille, don't give up." And I say all this because even though my mom and I had a very tumultuous relationship growing up, she became very, very supportive of me. When I had my daughter, she was always there, always there. She would take her for me. When I had problems with her father, I was at her house one day. She says, "Go home and take care of your business because I see you're not settled. Go home. I'm going to keep her safe." Sure enough, I went back to him being with someone else. And so my mom became very supportive of me and really encouraged me to continue to go. And I would cry, and she goes, "Kamille, you know," I say I'm built for it tough. I get that from my mom. And she's always like, "You can handle it. Just keep going. You can't afford to stop. Keep going. Put one foot in front of the other and keep going." Because I'm like, "Mom, I can't do this anymore." And I felt like a complete failure. It was affecting my ability to be a good mother, my ability to do my job well, even though people, they say when I say I wasn't doing my best, they're like, well, what is that? Because all I knew was to keep going, just keep going and do what I had to do. But I knew on the inside that it wasn't my best. And so I finally got divorced and moved to Japan, moved back to Okinawa where I was born. While I was in Guam, I found myself pregnant again. So I had a second daughter, and she was born in Okinawa where I was born. Same hospital, same floor, same room. And I was the same age as my mom was when she had me at that same hospital. So it was kind of like a full circle thing. But I was single with 2 kids, and my job was very demanding. So long story short, after my daughter was 17 months old, I had to go deploy. I had to do TDYs, which is temporary duties, where you go to different countries, do missions, and come back. And I was paying like $1,400 a month for daycare. I only saw my children on the weekend, 1.5 days a week. And it was very expensive, and I didn't have any quality time. So I made the decision to send them home with my family for 2 years, 22 months. I was without my children. And that was so that I can take care of the needs of the Air Force. Some days I worked 16 hours, 18 hours, 14 hours. I switched shifts back and forth. And it wasn't fair to them to have somebody else raise them. Even though someone else raised them, my family, it was my family instead of someone else. Those times were very difficult too, but as soon as I got orders, I went back and got my children. And so kind of suffered a lot of those things. Aircraft maintenance is a male-dominated field and a white male-dominated field. And I was often the only black female in my position, in my unit, that was in the position I was doing, calling shots and things. And so I dealt with a lot of people trying to sabotage my career, telling me they didn't want to see me win. They didn't want me to make it. I had a supervisor that literally said that. He said, you're on the fast track to senior, and I don't want you to be one. It didn't matter that I had all the qualifications. It didn't matter that I was outperforming all of my peers. He didn't want me to be a senior. He really hindered my career, set me back, what we call it, about 4 to 5 years of where I would have been promoted. But they called me the cleanup woman because they said I knew how to make teams and people work. So they would often put me in difficult situations, say, this place is suffering, you need to go and help them. And they say, how do you do that? Well, I know people, and I know when people are hurting. And so we often look at the behavior, but it's really what's beneath the behavior. The behavior is a symptom, right? So I learned that when you talk to people and you learn who they are, you understand how they work, and you can get them to work for you. You figure out how to motivate them. And that was my tactic. And it was because no one ever asked me what I was going through. Nobody asked me, Kamille, are you okay? It was always, this is what we want. And so when I had those issues, I was acting out because there was so many other things going on. And so I began to sympathize and empathize with other people. And so instead of just, leading with an iron fist, I would always pray and say, God, give me the words, the wisdom to know what I'm getting into when I go here. And when I started listening to people, I was able to help them in ways that other people couldn't get through to them. So I was very successful in leading teams. But at the same time, people were still like, I don't know, jealous? Maybe, like, how do you get that? And why are you doing this? And why are you getting these awards? And why are you, And it was very difficult. So I found myself having to stand up for my people, having to stand up for myself. And I got to a point where I said, well, what's the worst that can happen? You guys going to fire me? You can't fire me. I'll retire, So I started speaking my mind. And in doing so, I earned the trust and respect of a lot of my higher leaders. So they would often ask me to come into the room, say, Kamille, give us the pulse of the room. Tell us what's really going on. Here's the issues that we have. Places I should have no business being in, the commanders would call and say, we want your perspective. We value your perspective. Because I was so vocal. Because nobody ever asked me how I was feeling. Nobody ever listened to the things I was dealing with. It was suck it up, buttercup. And I refused to continue that for my folks. So I would advocate on their behalf. Oftentimes, I was like, I don't know if this is the right thing because I feel like I'm putting my career in jeopardy. But because it was the right thing, something in me wouldn't let me not do it. And so, long story short, I just began standing up for people. And it was my way of standing up for myself through other people because no one ever stood up for me. From childhood, I just felt like no one ever stood up for me. My career, no one ever stood up for me. So I became a voice for all those other people who didn't have a voice of their own. And I really was, in a way, standing up for myself in a way that I still couldn't do for myself. So I became a master resilience trainer. I, went through counseling my whole life. But became a master resilience trainer, teaching people how to grow through adversity, and how not to let it knock you down and keep you down, how to keep going, and how those challenges really force you to grow and how you can use those experiences to be better. And so that's what I did. When they would do things to me, as a punishment, I would take it and say, that's one more tool I have in my toolbox. And then they couldn't figure out why, well, I thought that was a punishment, but she's taking it as, because I'm learning something along the way. So I would teach other people to do the same thing. And so eventually, I decided that my Air Force career was coming to an end. I was fighting a big fight when I left. And sometimes you have to choose between peace of mind, like I needed a mental break. 25 years of Air Force, I've been fighting. My whole life I've been fighting. And I really just needed a pause mentally. I decided I wanted to retire on my own terms. They called me a unicorn because in my career field, very few, in my specific career field, very few of us make what they call chief or even senior master sergeant, which is where I retired, which is an E8. The highest you can go is E9. And in my career field, I only know one black woman that reached that pinnacle. So a lot of people go, you're our career field, and you're a woman, and you're black, and you made it there? And I said, yeah, you're a unicorn. I said, no, I'm not a unicorn. I'm a person. But, they said, this just never happens. But I went out on my terms. And my father at that point was getting sick, and I didn't think he would have another 3 years to see me at the final, make another rank. So I decided to retire, which was the best decision I could have made. And because a few months later, he passed away. And but he got to see me retire. And that was one of my goals. He's the one that inspired me to go. He's the one that made it possible. And I wanted him to be there to see me, at the culmination of my career. And he was so proud. But in all of that, I just knew that everything that I went through was for a reason. And today, I do human trafficking prevention, with a group in California. I have spoken on stages, virtual stages all over the world, shared my experiences, whether it's through leadership, resilience, personal stories, whatever. And right now, like I said, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a writer. I had written 2 books, or written 1 book at the time, and it was called Dear Daughters. And it was all of the things that I had learned that I would want my daughters to know about relationships, about finding your worth, about settling, about friendships, about finances, all of those things. And I published it. And then I would write Facebook posts. Then my friend calls me, Nigel, and she says, hey, Kamille, do you know any ghostwriters? And I said, no, but I could probably find you some. So then she goes, well, actually, I want you to do it. And I said, what? She says, God told me you could write my book. And I said, he didn't tell me that. I said, he didn't tell me that. So she says, well, pray about it. And let me know what you think. So the answer that I heard was yes. And that opened up my world completely. I did something that I never thought I could do. It challenged me in so many ways. it was in line with what I was passionate about, was helping people tell their stories, to heal, to let people know that they're not alone. And it really changed my life. That one thing changed my life. And today I'm writing stories for people. I do copywriting, website, web copy, email marketing, social media stuff. And it's because of that. And I really believe that God puts the right people in your path at the right time. As I was making this transition, I had an opportunity to go into another federal job. So I was without a job for a year. I have some invisible scars. I have some scars from life, from the military. And, but I wasn't getting compensated for that for an entire year. But I trusted myself. I trusted what people said about me, the good stuff. I trusted what I heard in my spirit, that I know was God talking to me, that says, if you trust me, I got you. Every need was met. I had not a single late bill. My daughter was taken care of. I didn't have to move out of the house that I was in. I didn't have to give up my car. We ate every single day. Our lights were on. Our water was running. Everything was taken care of. And I had very little money. And everybody says, how did you do that? For the first time, I trusted God and I trusted myself. I trusted my skills. I trusted what I already had in me. And I just began to operate in that. And then people began showing up in my life. They gave me opportunities. People came and spoke into my life. Someone who had never met me before and says, you're much like me. Give up the other stuff for a while. Try writing. Said, if you do that, I promise you it'll take you places. And he was absolutely right. And he had no idea about the books that I had written before. Scoured my Facebook and everything like that, saw some things. And I trusted that. And so I went from nothing to where I am in a very short period of time. And I am overly blessed to be able to, right now, travel East Africa, I keep saying I don't know why I'm here, but I do know why I'm here. And it's because God purposed for me to be here. And so I just like to inspire people, especially women, no matter what you've been through, it doesn't define who you are. And oftentimes I had to learn how to utilize the things that I had. I had to write a lot. I had to do programs while I was in the Air Force. Hated doing them half the time. Teach this class, do this. But it was all a setup for where I am right now. And so don't take the little skills. I always say don't take the little skills for granted, because we write every day, but people take it for granted that you can convey a message in a way that other people can't. Don't overlook that. If you have organizational skills, people look for that. People have people come into their homes and organize their houses because they don't know how. If you have good speaking skills, you can teach that to someone else. You can go inspire others to tell them their stories, to teach them how to convey that. Just little things that we do every single day. What gifts and talents do we have that we overlook, we minimize, that we say? And I help to bring that out in people. And so I know that it's because of all of that stuff, being overlooked, that I became very conscious of looking within other people to see what they had that was special and help to bring them out, so that people can see them. They can be seen and be heard and be valued. And it was largely because of my own story. I felt that was missing in my own life. And I didn't want anybody under me to feel the same way that I did. So unknowingly, I began building that skill, which again helps me to convey other people's stories in a way that is hard for them to tell. Because I know what hurt feels like. I know what frustration, disappointment, betrayal, anger, all of that irritability, I know what that feels like. And so even though it's their story, I can connect the dots and help them. You tell me, because I know what that hurt feels like. But I need you to tell me first before I write it down, and here's this thing that's missing. So even though my life is completely different, I went from the Air Force to being a writer, and people go, how did you do that? I listened to myself. what I heard on the inside. I trusted that I had the skills, that what was brought to me, that I was fully resourced to carry it out. I had everything that I needed in me. I just needed the confidence. And then there were people that came and gave me that boost of confidence, that borrowed belief we talk about. Sometimes when you don't believe in yourself, you have to borrow the belief of others until you believe it for yourself. And I did that. And I had some very good friends that really walked me on that journey, and my mother, who is my number one fan. Anything that I do, my mother is so supportive. She allows me to talk about the story because it's part of hers. And as a mother, she was going through her own set of depression. All the things that she was dealing with my father. And as I was going through my divorces, I realized how that affects everything. There was a point where it was hard for me to hold my daughter. Every time I looked at her, I would cringe. And I had to really, the same one that may not have been here had I listened to other people. And I had to pray hard and say, heal the hurt within me, because she doesn't deserve that. So all of that has helped shape who I am today. Well, my mother used to tell me something. She used to always say, don't let them win. And that was anybody who tried to stop me from doing what I knew I was purposed to do. She said, don't let them win. You just keep moving. You keep going. And eventually, you'll look back, see how far you come. You'll look and see where you are, and you'll have a vision for how far you can go. And even though it's easier said than done, I realized that I have a choice in my life. That based on my thinking, I could be a victim, but I was like, I can show you better than I can tell you. It was almost trying to prove to other people that at first, like, I'm not what you think I am. I'm better than that. But then it was really, I kind of changed it. Like, I'm challenging myself to see how far I can really go. You told me I couldn't, but let me show you how I can, And so it was, don't let them win, that really helped me to change perspectives and not just succumb to all the things, because that's just a tad bit of what I went through. If I told the whole, people always that know me and know my story, they're like, I don't see how you can make it. But there was a fight in me. I grew up physically fighting, but I had to shift to this mental fight. And mentally, I'm like, I've seen what people who can't get out of their situation, I see what that does to them. A lot of them are homeless and on the street. And while I have PTSD, I don't want that to define me. So I'm working through those issues, to help me, because I know that there's so much more to me than just that, or the things that have happened in my life. And so gratitude has helped me. Being thankful for all of the small things that I've had. Yes, I went through abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, verbal abuse, but I'm still here. I'm thankful for my child that I didn't abort. I'm thankful for the restoration of the relationship between my mother. I'm thankful for the time that I got to spend with my father before he passed away. I'm thankful for all of the experiences, because it really shaped me. They say you can't create a diamond without heat and pressure. And I realized that all of that was necessary to make me who I am, to prepare me for the mission that I have on my life, or for the purpose that I have in my life. And I understand that because I didn't let it break me, it's allowing me to help so many other people to overcome. But I look at all those things. My my supervisor used to punish me, right? And she used to make me go and brief the general all the time. And I was like, why do I have? And she was like, well, because, whatever her reasons, they were never good. But anyway, one day it clicked. And I said, she's punishing me, but really she's sharpening me. She's giving me a skill. And that skill, and she was very meticulous about everything. She would get on me about the smallest miss anything. But she really made me a better organized person, a better writer. They would call on me to do everything because they were like, oh, If she does it, it's going to be done right. But she tried to use that to hurt me. And in the end, it really helped me. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that she did that. I'm grateful that she saw enough in me to pick on me and, put me in those situations that she thought was going to break me. But it really, really shaped and molded me and made me a stronger person. So gratitude in everything, even in the bad things that I've been through. Here's the thing about trauma. Let me tell you this. When you go through so much and people are not listening, it's hard to believe when there is someone who comes along and has your best interest at heart, because all of the other people have betrayed you and other people have, dismissed you and done it. It's hard. Trust is broken. And it's not just broken with those people, but you start to mistrust or distrust people that actually have your best interest at heart. And so I couldn't differentiate. I was always in fight mode, even towards the people who were trying to help me. And so it took some hard falls and some maturing to realize everybody is not trying to hurt me. That there are some good people out there that want to see the best in me, that want to see me win. Because I had so many people who were trying to tear me down, sabotage my career, hurt me physically, and all these different things, that anybody who tried to come in, there was this vulnerability. You have to be vulnerable to trust people. And I had these walls up. So it wasn't that I was just trying to be outright rebellious or hard-headed or stubborn, but I didn't know how to be vulnerable. I was trying to protect myself. If I would have learned that there were people that I could trust that really had my best interest at heart, I would have listened more. I would have listened sooner. And I probably would have not had, in some respects, as hard a time as I did. So it took a lot to rebuild trust that everybody's not out to get you, that you can trust a person until they show you they're not trustworthy anymore. So I probably would have had less heartaches and headaches if those walls weren't so tall and so thick. If I would have learned or had people who I felt had my best interest at heart younger. That stuff is built up over time. There were a lot of things I would have done. But listen, you can't heal what you hide. And oftentimes we think by ignoring or suppressing that things will just magically go away. Or, when I was going through a lot, I would always say, I know how much I can take, until I got to a breaking point and I didn't know how much more I could take. I would say to those people, there is healing in honesty. And even if you're just honest with yourself, because a lot of times you're going through these events and you're like, it's not that bad. It's not, this, or am I overreacting? You start second guessing your own, and then it's like, nobody's going to believe me. I don't want to say that. Sometimes, and I had to say it out loud. I remember this very distinctly. But I had to look in the mirror and I had to speak out loud all of those bad things that happened to myself. And there was a release. And I can't explain what that was to me. And I realized that I had never really looked at myself in the mirror. Like really looked at myself. And I remember sitting there looking in my eyes. And as I'm speaking these things, and I go, but there's got to be better. God didn't put me here just to have all of this stuff. There's got to be more to me. There's got to be more to my life. And I was like, I'm going to be honest. I was like, God, if you don't show me what it is and why I went through all of this stuff, like, I'm going to quit. You're going to have to show me now because I can't go through this no more. But it was, I think about it now and it was really funny, but I was really serious. And I was at the point where I felt like there was almost no hope. But I was like, this can't be life. There's got to be more. And it's up to me to find what that more is. And so I spoke those things. And I was honest with myself. And then there was this freedom, and then it was like, I can create my life. I can do whatever I want to do. I can go and challenge myself to do more, to do better. I can try something and decide whether I like it or not, or if I'm good at it, and then go and do something else, like I can do that. And I can create the life that I want to live. And that all of those things really, again, just because that happened doesn't mean that that's the end all be all, and that's what my life is going to be. And it was a shift, and something changed, and I was like, I don't want to live this kind of life anymore. I want more. I want better. I see other people have better. What makes them different than me? Like they're a person just like I am. Like, what makes them different? And so when I changed my mindset, about it, that I have the power to create, and I have the power to overcome. I have the power to find hope. And sometimes you got to find it. Hope just doesn't just show up one day, but hope is in every day I wake up, that I have a new chance at life. Hope is that I see someone else starting a new business. Hope is that I see someone getting off welfare, and so I had to really look for a lot of things that gave me hope. I had to look for it. They say what you seek, you'll find. If you look for the bad stuff and you always remember, oh, the bad, that's what you're going to find. Or they say the wolf you feed is the one who wins, right? And so I started looking for all of the good things in my life. Goes back to that gratitude. But it doesn't come easy. And you have to be very persistent and consistent in doing so. And before you know it, like, my life completely changed when I started being grateful for the little things. And people that know me go back, I'm like, look, I'm trying to be a good steward of the little things, so God will bless me with more. So that's what I just kept doing. And I had to talk to myself, be honest with myself about, these are the hurts that I've been through, but I'm still here and I have a chance to make it better. So, it doesn't matter what you've been through. You determine how you want your life to be. There'll be challenges, there'll be obstacles, there'll be traumas, there'll be whatever. But, you can take those things as a stepping stone, or they can be your stumbling blocks. And I chose to make all of those stepping stones. And I will continue to do so, because I know that there's still going to be challenges. I'm going to be faced with people and things that, I don't foresee coming. But I also know that if I've been through and got through everything I've been through, that I can get through anything that comes my way. So find hope, practice gratitude, co-create your life, write down what it is that you want, and you'll see those things come into life. And I really do that. I'm checking off things on my list that were only a dream so far away, but now they're my reality. And for anybody else, they could be yours. So don't give up hope.